Interviews can be one of the most nerve-wracking experiences inside the job search process. Having to convey and demonstrate and showcase your experience as well as your value really puts a tremendous amount of pressure on. Being confident and showing a cool collective demeanor is often where most people struggle inside this process. How confident are you inside your interviewing skills and inside the job search process? Hey everyone, and welcome to my channel. If you're new around here, my name is Jennifer Fellon. I am a career strategist and a leadership expert helping you bridge the gaps of where you are to where you want to be inside your career. If you want, you're welcome to travel over to my website, jenniferfellon.com, where I host a tremendous amount of blog articles as well as my podcast, the Career Vault Podcast, where you can download a ton of content centering around how you can bridge the gaps of where you are to where you want to be inside your career. Recently, I just released my new ebook, The 7 Skill Sets That Successful Leaders Share. You're welcome to download it. It's completely free, as well as you're welcome to download my public speaking ebook and my free brand training, how to create a confident brand as well as an elevator speech. You've clicked through this video because you're interested in understanding how to be more confident inside a job interview. Job interviews are extremely critical inside and a make or break if you're going to get a job. And even though you convey well, as long as you're confident, you're usually going to land a little bit further than other candidates. So let's dive in on different ways that you can hone in your skills and appear and feel more confident inside a job interview. All right, the first part that we're going to talk about in how to feel more confident inside a job interview is looking and preparing for a job interview. Whenever you go into an interview, you want to make sure that you feel and are prepared for that interview. So when I talk about creating a resume, and in prior videos, I've talked considerably about making sure that you want to tailor your resume for success. But whenever you go into an interview, we want to expand that and take it a lot further. Whenever you're looking and you're going into a job interview, you want to make sure that you've taken the time to prepare for that. And you want to research that specific company. Now, whenever I've applied in the past, or whatever I encourage my clients to apply to a position, we want to make sure that that resume is designed out for that specific role and that we're able to take that resume in with us, and that's pretty much our walking billboard. But we also want to research the company and make sure that we understand who the company is, what the culture is about, and maybe a little bit more background when we go inside there. A lot of times when companies ask why you're interested in the role, they want to hear a kind of finessed version about why you're genuinely interested in working for that company specifically. The next part that you really do want to deep dive and you want to look at is you want to practice common interview questions that are tied in to that specific role and that specific company. Now, for both of these sections inside preparation, we want to keep in mind that when we practice and we research and we gain a little bit more knowledge, that we're practicing those interview questions out loud. And even though it is a little bit of an outdated advice, it really works every single time, which is to really get in front of a mirror and practice those common interview questions. Now, if you're in a specific type of role or a specific type of industry, we want to make sure that we're looking at those different questions and we practice the answers for those questions so that way they don't sound robotic, but B, more so that they sound authentic and genuine and they sound like you're very confident in that. The more that you practice those common interview questions, the more confident that you're going to feel when giving that answer. And a lot of the time when people go out on a stage or they go in front of interviews, your nerves are always, or your butterflies are always very high. When we do this, oftentimes we'll default, and that default mechanism triggers in our brains. What we've practiced, what we've researched, and what we've mimicked before often becomes something that we talk out loud about because it's what we've remembered and it's what we've practiced before. Now, what I often encourage is when we take those common interview questions, we might, if it's a specific role or it's something that you're looking to grow up the mountain and you're looking to expand your career, you might even consider going and venturing into doing a mock interview. Mock interviews are really great, especially if you're looking to level up your career. You don't know what an interviewer is going to ask, and sometimes researching those common interview questions and then maybe going behind it with a mock interview can really help you, because that interviewer can give you a different set of questions that you may not have considered, or it might blindside you in the mock interview, where you have to take a step back and say, hey, I didn't think about that. Give me a second here so that I can answer. Now, one thing I encourage is when you're able to use both of those, you're able to get this wonderful gift called feedback. Whenever you finish a mock interview, I always ask for feedback, whether it's my body language, my position, my interview answers, the questions. Was there enough meat and potatoes inside the question that really separates me from the pack when I interview? And that's something that you want to take a look at, is do your stories convey and do they land with the interviewer or the mock interviewer, and are they sufficient enough for the position you're applying for? Applying all of these tactics is really going to help you feel a lot more prepared inside the interview. And when you feel more prepared, you exhibit a level of confidence. One of the things that makes it very hard for an interviewer is when somebody that they're interviewing spaces out, or they stumble, or they repeat, or they weren't very prepared at all. A lot of interviews that we do today, the candidate is often not prepared. So just by taking the extra time to prepare yourself and get ready for the interview is already going to separate you from a majority of people that are out there that just go into the interview and they wing it. And that's not something you want to do, because it's very noticeable when the answers aren't prepared. The person who has a prepared answer is often the person who gets further inside the interview. Now, the second part that I want to talk about in how to be more confident inside jobs interviews is really understanding, mastering your mindset. Confidence doesn't always come easily to everybody, but what it can come easily for is if you really start to step back and master your mindset. Whenever you're looking for the perfect job, or you're like, hey, this is it, this is the dream job that I've always wanted, often that's going to come with a lot of nerves. When we master our mindset and we start to look at, okay, I want to shift my mindset from anxiety to opportunity or excitement. The same nerve system translates with anxiety and it translates with excitement. So what I often do whenever I go into a new situation and I may have a few butterflies, or I may be a little excited, is I really like to keep it in more of a positive mindset. Having a positive mindset is going to help you move further than having a negative mindset. So you want to take a look and you really want to shift your mindset from being anxious to saying to yourself that you're more excited. Focusing on this is really going to help you reframe and look through a lens with a different paradigm, allowing you to be more successful on that interview. When you go in, and what I often do, or what I often recommend, is when you go into an interview and you're nervous or you're excited for it, is really to understand that you have nothing to lose. And if you have nothing to lose, but only to gain, you're going to go much further, because you go in, you relax, and you can start to be yourself, because you're visualizing that you're going to enjoy yourself inside that conversation. And that's the second part of this section, is really to visualize how the interview is going to go. So in the last section, we talk about the preparation. In this section, we want to train our mindset for success. When we do that and we visualize that success, or we visualize that goal, what'll happen and what'll translate is that visualization is how we train our body to act in that situation. Whenever I talk to people and they start to move up the ladder and we talk about public speaking, I work with them to visualize what they look like on stage, how they'll feel, and how they look. And those are key elements that can really help you stand out, is to really visualize that interviewer and visualizing those different types of questions, how you're answering those questions, but more importantly, also taking into that visualization how you feel and how you want to convey that message. These go a little more together. When you talk and you do a mock interview, it's a good time to be able to practice that visualization. And you can stop the interview in a mock interview and really step back and say, I want to try it again. Now, the third part of this section that I also work with a lot of people is our internal thoughts can really affect us, especially negative self-talk. A lot of times, this is one of the biggest confidence killers, is negative self-talk. And you might not think that it's as big, but it really truly is, because a lot of people often talk down to themselves internally. You want to take time and avoid that negative self-talk and continue to train your mind to look at it more optimistically. This is a great chance for you to practice your interviewing skills, and even if you don't get the job, you can always request feedback and get up and try again. And those are some things that, that self-internal motivation really starts to jive. And when you do move forward and you move that self-talk away that's negative, or you tend to look at yourself in a different paradigm, you're going to be more successful, because you're not always looking down on yourself and you're not always talking down about yourself. So looking at those things are important, because you become more confident when you view yourself in a more positive light. Inside an interview, one area that I like to focus in is how you convey or how you portray yourself. So your body language always speaks volume, and your body language, how you act, how you position yourself, is very important inside an interview. Your handshake is important, how you look, your posture, your eye contact. All of these things are incredibly important when you're in an interview. Now, a lot of people often are very, very nervous, so it's really hard to remember to do these things over and over in an interview. But if you can master the art of your body positioning and your posture and your body language, it's really going to help you move the needle forward. So the first area inside body language that I talk to people about is, what is your posture? When you sit down in the chair, are you slouched down? Are you leaned in? Are you sitting up straight? Are you too stiff? Are you cross-armed? Those are all things to keep in mind with your posture. Whenever I go into interviews, I like to lean in and I like to show that I'm very, very engaged. And I try not to cross my arms at all, because it shows a closed mindset when you do that. Making sure that you're engaged and you have a good posture also helps you exhibit self-confidence, and you want to make sure that you demonstrate that. Now, the next area inside body language that I talk to a lot of people about to be more confident in an interview and display that confidence is to make eye contact with different people. Now, if it makes you nervous, sometimes what I'll do is I'll look at a person's the side of the face a little bit more, or I'll look at different people, so that way I don't stare at one person one-on-one. Now, if you are on a one-on-one interview, that's okay, and it's okay to break eye contact at times, but you want to make sure that with eye contact that you're demonstrating that you're engaged in the interview. Now, the next part, which I know this sounds simple, is you want to display a friendly demeanor, and you always want to smile inside an interview. A lot of people take this for granted, but when you smile in an interview and you have engagement and you have personality, it really goes a long way. People don't smile inside interviews. They often take it very, very seriously, and it can be hard for an interviewee or an interviewer to really break down that barrier and get to know the person authentically. So when you're inside an interview, always remember to smile. And then behind that, you want to look at your gestures and how you kind of move your body. I'm a very talkative person, so I like to move my hands a lot whenever I'm talking with friends. But when I go into an interview, I have to make sure that my hand movements, they're a little bit less and that it's a little bit more posed and polished. But the gestures that you make and how you look and how you act are very important. I also take gestures and I even apply that to what does my facial expressions look like when I have certain ways that I rest my face. And this may sound silly, but I've had to look at that inside a mirror and really understand what I look like and what different muscles I'm using when I make a different expression to make sure that I know how I'm expressing myself and how my gestures come across. Now, the next part that I want to go into to kind of give yourself a lot better body language and a lot more confidence is how are you breathing inside an interview? Whenever you work and you take a look at your breathing and you look at if you're nervous, you might be breathing a little bit faster. You know, it's okay to say, hey, I'm just a little bit nervous. And that might be able to take a few things down or your anxiety down a little bit. But you want to remember to have calm, cool breathing, because when you breathe slower and you are able to regulate your body, you're going to slow down and you are going to appear more confident because you feel like you should be there inside that interview. All right, the next way to be more confident inside an interview is always dressing for success. Now, this is tricky because whenever you go into an interview, you really have to dress for the company culture and you have to dress for that particular position. And that's going to be different between what position you're applying for. More artistic and more creative types are going to dress very differently than those that are applying for a lawyer position, finance, or business. In fact, how you dress for a particular job is very different as you move up the ladder. And you want to keep that in mind, that your dress is very important. But depending on the role, you want to wear professional attire. A lot of roles, whenever you're interviewing or looking to level up, you want to make sure that you dress professionally for the interview. You also want to keep in mind that what you wear, that it doesn't bother you too much. For example, I don't like polyester clothing, and whenever I wear an interview shirt, I try to make sure that the shirt that I'm wearing isn't too uncomfortable or that it's not too stiff, and that I'm comfortable in the clothes that I am wearing in the interview. Usually when I interview, I always like to keep it very, very sharp, very professional, but the shirt that's a collar that I wear, I don't like it to be too stiff, because what happens is even though we all get nervous or we all get excited, I want to make sure at least that part is comfortable and I'm not worried about the material rubbing on my skin. And that does create a distraction. So you always want to make sure whatever you're wearing, you are comfortable in. Now, the next part that you want to look at inside dressing for success is your personal grooming. You want to make sure that you're well groomed for an interview. If you're well groomed for an interview, it can increase the salary that's being offered by 30%. And that's a huge win. When you groom and you make sure that you dress for success and that everything is on point, even though that you want to be comfortable, you may not be in the clothing that you like to be in all the time, making sure that you really come in looking top notch is very, very important for that setting. Now, the next part is making sure when you're inside an interview that you represent yourself authentically and that you show your personality. Anywhere that you apply, it needs to be a place that you want to be and a place that you want to work for. And that's important. All the stuff before doesn't really matter if you're not interested in applying for that particular position. But being confident in everything prior is really also making sure that you're authentic in who you are and your personality. You want to be yourself and you want to answer the interview questions authentically in the way that really best shows your personality and how you're going to demonstrate and bring value to that company. You want to connect with the interviewer for who you are, not who they particularly want you to be. So when you go in and you're authentic and you show your personality, those are usually the best interviews when somebody really understands how they want to interview and they have their answers and they know their answers, because then you can start to have that wall come down and you can really show who you are. But more importantly, you can really decide if that's the place that you want to be. What happens when you have a setback in an interview? Well, we all have setbacks in an interview. There's even been times where if I've had setbacks in an interview, and sometimes the interview doesn't always go as well as you're hoping it to be, or you get that left field question, or even at times the interviewer asks a question that is just flat out rude. So handling setbacks are very, very important, and you always want to take the time to practice them. You always want to pause and collect your thoughts, and you want to demonstrate that left field question by a pause, take a deep breath, because it shows that you're not going to just spit out a random answer. And what happens when that does happen and you spit out a random answer, you start rambling. You want to make sure that you take a breath and you pause. Collect your thoughts and really think about how you're going to answer that question. There's been times in interviews where I've actually taken a step back and I've looked at my sheet and my resume to see what story would best convey for that answer. Or better yet, how I would answer that question with what story that I have on my resume and what one would be the best way to convey what they're looking for and what they want to get out of it. So you want to remember that setbacks are okay. We all have setbacks and it's very normal, but how you handle the setback is going to be key inside an interview. All right, that's it for this video. Between now and my next video, you're more than welcome to check out my website, jenniferfellon.com, where I host a tremendous amount of different blog articles and my podcast, the Career Vault Podcast. You're welcome to go to Apple or Spotify to be able to download my podcast, as well as Amazon Music if you're on the go. You're also welcome to join my free on-demand masterclass, A Pathway to 100K, if you're looking to break through and get to that six-figure salary. All right, I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.